He's rough, he's tough, he's a cowboy, baby. Let's go. And today we're going to be telling you why you shouldn't be summoning for BOOTYHILL. Did I say he does have a I'm sorry. Anyways, gamers, today we're going to be talking about why you shouldn't be summoning for BOOTYHILL as a free-to-play player, why he could maybe be bad for your account, ineffective for your account, and everything in between. What are the pros and cons with Mr. BOOTYHILL, right? So we're going to be pinpointing every single negative with BOOTYHILL today, but let's start off with a brief overview of him first. Overall, guys, I think that BOOTYHILL is going to be a fine DPS. I like the fact that he's able to change the weakness type of the enemy, making them weak to physical damage, which he is able to provide. Also, on top of this, guys, I love characters that are able to give a buff to a stat based off of another stat, because this is basically free stats for a character with BOOTYHILL. That is crit rate and crit damage, which bleed is the best break in the game already. So being able to build him into a break role here seems really nice, and then it gives you free crit rate, crit damage. So I think he could technically be a pretty good option for free play players, because it does give crit rate, crit damage, which is arguably a pretty hard stat to build into characters. Now, the actual farming for his kit and stuff like that, maybe this patch is not the best patch to farm for everything that you would need for him. Maybe we're getting a set in the future that might help with break effect more. I don't know. Don't shoot the messenger, guys. I'm just saying what I think could come to the game. So you might farm for something now and then something better comes out in the future that you would want to build him with. So pre-farming could be a pain in the ass, but overall I think his kit does work pretty nicely. He has pretty good weakness break efficiency, and I think he'll be able to run pretty good on break compositions. But let's go ahead and hop into negative number one right now, which is you guys are not subscribed to this YouTube channel. Now, I'm sure you've seen it, guys. All the content creators, BOOTYHILL's amazing! Oh, BOOTYHILL's great! And sure, I'll say BOOTYHILL's good when he's good, right? I think he's pretty decent, but I also will give you all the negatives as well. I'm not gonna bullshit you guys. I'm gonna give it to you guys as straight as it is. I'm not gonna sit here and I can't do it because I'm gonna get demonetized. I'm not gonna throat the Hoyoverse, okay? That's what I'm trying to say here. Anyways, guys, let's go ahead and hop into actual negative with number one now. He's not as good as Acheron. Now, before you guys run to the comment section, but Acheron's special, Acheron's so good. And yes, I understand that. I actually don't need him to be as good as Acheron. What I need him to be is better than Jingliu and Danny, right? I think Jingliu and Danny represent the era of 1.0. That is the top tier damage you could get into 1.0. And I think the top tier damage that we're representing in 2.0 right now is Miss Acheron. That's where the level's at, right? Even though some people want to say, oh, don't set the level up here, don't set the expectation up here. I think that should be the expectation of the max level damage you can expect from someone, and Jingliu and Danny should be the lowest level of damage you should expect out of your DPS characters from 2.0. I think they need to fall between that range, being a limited 5-star, and I honestly don't think he falls in between that range. I think that he's probably pretty close to Danny and Jingliu in terms of damage. He might be a little bit worse. I think he's there. I think he's going to be right there with Jingliu and Danny, but I don't think he fills in that gap in between where I would really want him to be at, because that's the gaps that arguably they need to be filled up. Because when we hop into 3.0, right, and we actually get to that point in months from now, right, we would expect a DPS then to outshine Acheron or be on at least the same level as Acheron, right? And that's like a good character, right? We know Acheron is a god character, and like I said, I think that we should hold her at a high standard, but I also think the baseline should be Jingliu and Danny Boy, and I think he falls on the level as them, but doesn't fall in that higher echelon. That's why I don't think he's really a must pull for anyone's account at all, just because he doesn't fall within these means of damage here, right? But let's go ahead and hop into problem number two now, is break. He is a break character. He's a very niched character, right? And the problem I have with niche characters, even though he does give himself crit rate and crit damage, you are still going to be relying on a lot of his damage from breaking the enemy's shield with him. And with some of these enemies we're getting added into the game now, you just cannot break the enemy shields. Some of their shields, have multiple shield bars, which just take you a lot longer to break the enemy shields down, which he would absolutely excel in, but there's also some enemies that you cannot break at all. Let's take the monkey, for example, when he pounds his chest and then you can't do any damage to his toughness gauge anymore, or just enemies like that, right? What if we get a big boss in the game that you can't damage his toughness meter, right? What if we get an enemy in the game that says you cannot change the toughness of this enemy, right? I think that would bring his value down quite a lot, and that's why I think him overall as a character could get power crept more often, because he's relying so much on that break effect. If he's not breaking, he'll get some crit damage, like I said before. His damage will still be okay, right? But it's not going to be in that mid-level of damage that I mentioned before. Let's hop into number 3 now. You need him to get hit, okay? That's, well, I mean, you have to have him get hit. When you use a skill, you draw. You go into a dual state, and what's that going to do? Going to make that enemy target you, which means you need a good sustain, a bussin' sustain on your team, so to make sure that he does not die. This is good for him because it gives him extra energy, but on top of that, you have to keep in mind, if you don't have a sustain character that can prevent debuffs, Swan, Japard, then you are going to be running into some issues, especially if you get something like Action Advanced Order Down, CCs, dots, really any debuff, attack down, slow, like really any debuff, he is going to be hit with that. And sure, he does get reduced damage from these hits, but debuffs overall are just not good to have on your attacking character, your main DPS character. It does give him his ult back up, but it's kind of counterintuitive because if he's getting hit with all these debuffs, then you're nerfing his own damage. So I think in certain scenarios, he's gonna pop the absolute fuck off in, especially, you know, these really DPS heavy characters or DPS heavy enemies that just do so much damage to you and really don't inflict debuffs. But if we face those new little candlelight bosses that just like throwing debuffs anywhere, sleep, then I think you're gonna run into a lot of issues with that as well. And now let's talk about something that I kind of touched on before, is like him having more HP to actually survive attacks and stuff like that. The build you're gonna need for him can be pretty rough, I'm not gonna lie, guys, because he's only giving himself 30% crit rate, and then he's giving himself 150 crit damage, which is absolutely huge. But you're going to need to be building at least 50 to 60% crit rate into his kit to get to that like 80 to 90% threshold, since he does do a lot of single target attacks. He does have Fan the Hammer, which hits multiple times, but you want to be doing as much damage as possible, meaning you need to build crit rate, you need to build some more crit damage into his kit, depending on the light cone you have. You're definitely going to need a lot of break effect in this kit, 300% to be exact. So you're talking, you're going to need main stats to run break effect, you're going to need substats to be break effect, you're going to need set bonuses to be break effect, you're going to need your planar set to possibly be break effect, as long as you're hitting that 300% threshold. Now, if you're running him with a Ruan May, then very pog, but if you're just coming to the game now, you don't have Ruan May to really increase that break effect there. Harmony MC will increase your break effect, and I think Harmony MC and him play really nice together, but you still need other stats. So you're probably going to need some type of effectorizer in his kit, because you don't want him to be getting debuffed and absolutely thrown to the Shadow Realm whenever he gets attacked or debuffed by an enemy. Even though he does reduce the action order when using his ultimate move, that doesn't mean you still can't be attacked, right? So these are just a lot of things you need to build into his kit. So let's break it down real quick. Crit rate, crit damage, break effect, attack percentage, HP percentage, probably, right? Or some type of defensive stat. That's at least 5 stats you're needing to build into him. Not to mention speed as well. Yeah, I forgot that. Speed, so 6 stats that you're probably going to have to be building into his kit. Give or take one of those stats, because like I said, if you're running a certain light cone that you might not need to run per se, like any extra crit rate, any extra crit damage into his kit, and then you're having to give and take a lot of those main stats there as well. So I don't think he's going to be a very easy build to actually work with. And that kind of leads me into the last point now is, yes, while he does give the enemy a physical weakness, which is absolutely amazing, you're still going to be running against the numbers here because of the fact that they do have elemental resistances. He does give increased damage to that enemy, of course, which is nice, but it wouldn't necessarily outweigh the amount of actual damage you're able to do to the enemy. Say that they didn't have a physical resistance, you are still giving like 20% less damage, and it doesn't matter if they're taking 30% more damage or not, right? That resistance is always going to be there on those certain enemies that you face, and let's be honest, a lot of the enemies in the game right now are not weak to physical. Why do you think Argenti is so bad? First of all, he has a high energy requirement. Second off, there are not really many physical enemies in the game that he can really work around. So take that with what you will. His ultimate cost is low, so he won't be running into the ultimate issues that I see, but that's really going to do it for today's video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what your thoughts are. Are you pulling for Boothill or are you skipping Boothill? Actually, I take that back. I retract that statement. I will be pulling on Boothill as a standard character would. My new agenda, guys, is whenever I get summons, I just yoink it. I just yoink it. I don't care if I have the character or not. I'm just yoinking it from now on. I want to do a test. I want to play like a casual for the next 6 months and just yoink summons as soon as I get them. I'm not saving for anyone to see what my account ends up like. Oh, one more thing. We're doing a Firefly giveaway, so make sure you join the Discord for that. Details on that will be up soon in a future video. When she's about 2 weeks away, we'll have a giveaway up for Miss Firefly in the Discord, so make sure you're joining the Discord. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for that. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it, guys. For real, bye-bye. See you later.